And I think when you have a Republican Congress, this is all going to come crashing down, and the wolves are going to find out that they're now sheep, and they're the ones who are, in fact, going to, I think, face a real risk of jail for the kind of laws they're breaking.
Well, this is such great analysis. Meanwhile, you see more Americans leaning to the right in the face of all of these policies.
Well, look, the Democrats are losing on two fronts. They're losing on a reality front. I mean, every time you go to buy gasoline, you're reminded they're incompetent. And they're losing on a policy front. People don't want a socialist, left-wing, radical America. So they have a two-front fight. They're going to lose both fronts. And I think it's going to lead to one of the largest tsunamis in American history as they get thrown out.
Yeah.
Greatest tsunamis in American history. You know, when we see this, Dutch, it's quite interesting, the state of America. You know, as we're moving into what happened with Justice Breyer, in fact, we've got a copy of his letter that he put up there. We can show that. Stephen Breyer's, I've decided to retire from regular active judicial service as an associate justice. I intend this decision to take effect when the court rises for the summer recess this year, typically late June, early July, assuming then my successor has been nominated and confirmed. That's pretty aggressive timeline, and that's what's got everybody abuzz. But Dutch, when I see this, you know, from a spiritual standpoint, we're seeing a lot of moving things come in. And my first thought with this is a distraction? A distraction from what's really going on. Now, we know that President Trump was a master of distraction. Look over here, look over here. I'll move the embassy to Jerusalem. Look over here, I'll do something else. You know, that was a good distraction. But we have to walk into this with our eyes open, and we have to see what's going on. And, you know, when we see it now, there's one thing to consider, and I know this is like a really long question, but there's one thing to consider here. This is a liberal, typically a more liberal appointee, Justice Breyer. We're not replacing a conservative. However, the point that I believe here, Dutch, that we're going to see is so important is how this administration, how they handle this process. And I think that's really going to be quite telling of where we're at.
Well, it will be, and they'll handle it the way they always handle things. They will. This whole process will be politicized, even though the courts are not supposed to be. There will be deception. There will be lies. There will be a lot of maneuvering and manipulating. You won't see, by the way, the riots and the violence take place on this one as you do when a conservative is nominated, because this will be a different approach. But I'll just say that, you know, I agree with you that so much is happening behind the scenes right now. And I just want to say to people, don't forget that not only are the liberals and the left doing things behind the scenes, but God is doing so much behind the scenes. And you talked about seeing, and we have to keep our eyes open and be alert. A dream given to me recently called the World Seers, SEERS series. And in that, in this dream, the conservatives, the right and left, were playing a baseball game, and it was the eighth inning, and we the conservatives were winning. Actually, not just conservatives, but the spiritual forces that were following Christ. We were winning, but this battle was intense. And God began to expose what the enemy was doing. Even the umpires were dishonest, and he was exposing that. And then the pitcher, finally God exposed the pitcher. His name meant hidden, or that which is hiding, and that was exposed, and God eliminated the voice of the evil. A baseball hit this evil hidden force in the throat. And so I'm not trying to get into super spiritualizing everything. I'm just encouraging people by saying God is telling us that not only is the enemy working, but I'm working behind the scenes, and I'm showing my people what to do. I'm giving strategies like I gave to John a while ago. That's an incredibly wonderful strategy. I'd like to do a post on it. I'll get the information and do a Give Him 15 post on it. God has people behind the scenes, just like this program, doing what he's doing. And I think there's probably not anything we can do to keep this keep another liberal from being positioned on the court, but we can keep the majority even if that happens. And who knows, maybe God has something up his sleeve that will even surprise everyone. We've had enough people we thought were conservatives that flipped to become a liberal justice. Maybe the opposite's going to happen. I'm just telling people God is working behind the scenes. He's exposing these evil forces, and it is the World Seer series. God is giving us eyes to see what's happening. We're not in the dark anymore, Gene. Right. We are not confused anymore. God's people are active now. Our eyes are open, and I believe what Newt said is true. There's a reckoning coming.
There is a reckoning coming. And Dutch, you don't have to worry about being super spiritual on this program, because we are. and I wear that. Give me a badge, I'll wear that. I don't care. This is who we are. This is where the church has to stand up, and I'll get off my soapbox here. Rand Paul. Senator, I want to get right into this. Thank you for joining us. I want to read a 2014 quote you shared from Henry Kissinger in an op-ed you wrote. For Ukraine to survive, it must not be either side's outpost against the other. It should function as a bridge between them. Senator Paul, is this even our war to fight?
I don't think so. I mean, we fight war in our country when Congress declares it, when our representatives declare it, and their decision-making, mine as a member of Congress, has to be on whether our national security is threatened. So, no, I don't think the problem in Ukraine is ours, but I do know that the president shouldn't act without congressional authority. But I do think there are ways to deter Russia from invading. Russia depends on exporting its oil and natural gas. By and large, I'm in favor of people buying it because that makes us interconnected. They're dependent on us buying it or Europe buying it, and Europe is dependent on getting it. But it's an interdependence between the two. But one thing we could tell to them, if we were able to get Europe to agree to this, particularly Germany, is, guess what, we're not going to buy anymore. We will completely cut you off if you invade Ukraine. That would be a threat that I think could have some impact. But I also think that we should also offer carrots as well as sticks. And the stick of the threat of a boycott is a significant stick. But the carrot I would offer is that I don't think it is wise for us to try to prompt Ukraine to be in a Western military alliance like NATO. I think that is very provocative towards Russia, and it would be a big mistake. So I think we should offer to them that Ukraine would remain neutral, not be part of NATO, but that if they do invade Ukraine, that there'll be a boycott of their oil. And I think that's a decent carrot and stick approach.
Do you think we'd be better off sending our troops to secure our own border?
Well, that's the point. I mean, that point's been made by a lot of people, and I agree with that. We're talking about, having people respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and yet we're not really respecting our own territorial integrity. The border to the south of us is wide open. The pictures are alarming of sending people, throughout our country, putting them on buses and planes and sending people who break into the country illegally across the United States. I think that's a mistake. I think it's one thing that actually President Trump excelled in, and that was the idea of the Remain in Mexico policy, that people coming up here need to remain in Mexico while their papers are processed. I think that was eminently sensible, and it was too bad that this administration has sort of opened the border wide open.
All right, final question. I know you need to go, but Justice Stephen Breyer, we found out, is stepping down from the Supreme Court. What type of nominee do you expect to be presented from this administration?
I would suspect they'll pick someone who believes the Constitution isn't worth the paper it's printed on, that the Constitution doesn't require any limitations on government, and that basically they want to let our country become a pure democracy where the majority gets their way. I would expect it'll be somebody with very, very liberal political views. I would suspect it'll be somebody who believes that you can have abortion all the way up until the time of birth. I think it'll also end up being somebody who believes that police are bad people and that we should defund the police departments. So I'm expecting the worst. If I get anything less than what I've described, it would probably be better. But I'm expecting that they will find the most extreme radical person that's available, and that's who they'll pick.
All right. Last question. How should the Republicans come out against this nominee? Suppose it's that person you just described. Do they come out swinging? What's the right attack to take with this?
I think if someone comes forward who's pro-abortion, particularly pro-abortion up until the time of birth, I will oppose them. So I'll just announce that from the beginning. There are many other reasons I will, but I'll wait and we'll review them. We'll find out what they stand for, but I won't support a nominee who doesn't believe that life is sacred and that life should be protected. So that on itself is enough for me. But also, if they come out with somebody who has actually talked about defunding the police, I think we need to push that point, because it's not just Republicans who think that's a dumb idea. 90% of Americans think it's a dumb idea to defund the police. But I'm afraid that's what they're going to look for. They're going to look for someone who's vilified the police and said the police are all terrible people. And I think it's the opposite. I think 99% of the people in law enforcement are good people and trying to do the right thing. And I really am worried about our country if we get people on the Supreme Court. We've got somebody in the White House who doesn't believe that we should have police in our cities. Our cities are going to go to rot and ruin if we're not careful.
Thank you so much, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. Thank you, sir, for your stand. You're a real patriot. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And let me ask you a couple other questions. Is there any scenario in which the president would select his Vice President Kamala Harris for the Supreme Court?
Again, I'm not going to speak to any considerations, preparations, lists, and as we've stated earlier, and you heard the president say, there's a long history of Supreme Court justices determining when they may retire, if they retire, and announcing that. And we're going to, that remains the case today.
Clearly, you're more wise.
Thank you. When you were asked about the vice president possibly being selected as a Supreme Court nominee, you said you're not going to speak to any considerations. Does that mean she is being considered?
Again, Peter, I'm not going to speak to the reports of a Supreme Court justice retirement that hasn't been announced.
So theoretically, would someone who's...
Theoretically, I do like that you preface it. I appreciate that.
Just wondering, hypothetically, theoretically, would someone who was an attorney general of a large state and who served with many key Senate votes be an attractive candidate to the president for an open Supreme Court seat?
I see what you did there, Peter. But the president has every intention, as he said before, of running for re-election, and for running for re-election with Vice President Harris on the ticket as his partner. But again, I will just reiterate that I have nothing more to offer in terms of specifics or information on the reports this morning.
All right, John, what do you think?
You know, it's pretty stunning. I think it's not going to happen that way. It would be such a blow to their credibility. I mean, because his favorability is so low. Hers is even lower. And a lot of her staff, there's a lot of these stories and stuff going on. I don't see that happening. Here's what I think is stunning that people don't talk about. Even if you're the most qualified person, so he has narrowly defined this, you better be black and you better be a female. That's thrown out every other race, not just whites, but Hispanics, Asians, all Indians, everybody else is now gone. Black men are gone because I'm going to do one thing. So she qualifies for that. I expect that he's going to do something that he can't lose Manchin on. I don't see Manchin leaving. And he's got a couple of Jackson and other people. She's kind of considered the front runner that's in the D.C. circuit. She got 3 Republicans to vote for her, didn't lose any of the Democrats. The truth is they have the votes. They've got, you know, and here's the other problem with Kamala Harris. If they need the 50 votes plus her, she's not going to get the other vote. Who's going to break the tie? She's the one that breaks the tie right now to do it. It's too risky a move to put her there because she's the tie-breaking vote. Unless they have somebody and they know they're going to have 1, 2, or 3 defections from the Republican Party, they got to get 50+%. I just don't see it, Gene.
Do you think Manchin and Sinema are going to go the company route here, the party route?
Absolutely.
You think so?
I think it would take a really, really extreme person for them. If you look at what's happened in the last year on the district court and the courts of appeals, man, they're not deviating. And Lindsey Graham, Murkowski, Collins usually are going with them. Occasionally you get as high as 63% or 63 of the, so you get 13 of the Republicans. And so I don't see that happening. Manchin is strong on life, okay? So if they get somebody who is so far out there on that issue, he is strong on life. You know, Sinema's not. So, I don't see it happening. You know, here's what I do want to say, though. This is a big, big issue, and it's going to kind of be in the attention of a lot of people, but they're just trying to hide all the last year of horrible bad news, and there's not a mechanism for the Republicans to try to stop this unless you get one single Democrat to defect or one of them passes away and all of a sudden the power in the Senate changes, because it is a narrow 50-50 right now. That's the only way I see this stopping, Gene. I think they're going to be able to get this nominee through unless they get somebody that one of the Democrats break on, and that's going to take a pretty radical person.